Boom. That would appear that we are live. So let me kick over here to Facebook Landia and see what the world has to say. Come on now.
Oh, I see it.
Beautiful.
We'll share it.
Awesome.
Go.
Share now.
Do you have multiple screens in front of you, Paul, or just have one?
Just one. I used to do it. I used to have the capability, but I found it like a distraction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I try to limit all the devices in front of me to just like one thing that I can look at it.
All right. Well, we are in fact.
Are we on Facebook Live right now, Rich?
Oh yeah.
What's that?
Yes, we are.
Awesome.
All right, I just shared out on the
live.
group as well. So we got 3 people watching.
Yeah, beautiful. Dude, I'm somebody.
That's good.
Well,
kick us out, Rich.
Kick this off here. And yeah, so hello world. As I do with every broadcast, I want to start with a simple Go Big Red. If you're not yet a fan, you will be soon. You'll be converted. Even you Michigan people, you'll figure it out eventually. But you know, always got to give a kickoff and a big Go Big Red shout. Talking to a couple of guys in Lincoln today, which is always makes me feel good, and I always like to get back home, as it were, whenever I can. So my name is Rich Hayden. I've got my old friend Matt Kirkland with me today. Very nice. And was that a Purdue?
No, that was our Huskers.
All right. I'm like, what are you doing, clown?
Nebraska.
And then we're really, really stoked to have Paul Jarrett, who is a Lincolnite, CEO of Blue Group, and an entrepreneur, a forward thinker, a guy who's dealing with all this mess right now. Yeah. And just wanted a keynote speaker. A podcaster, great podcast out there.
The new one?
Yeah. I've listened to the first 2 episodes. It's great.
We just got done recording today, and it was, I think once we got the first one done, people understood the premise, and boy, we went through the gamut today. So faileddisclosure.com.
Yeah, failed disclosure. Great, funny new podcast.
And a fellow
bald
human.
Clint Runge.
Yes.
Co-host of that. Another guy from Lincoln, an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Good guy.
Thanks for letting us promote that, Rich.
Yeah. Hey, anything I can do to help others, I am a giver. So if you got anything else, throw it out here, man. Okay. Brand awareness, big time. So, what our goal was today. I've been doing these things, for past, probably 3-4 weeks or so, just trying to bring together people, in the world, since we're all kind of, stuck where we are, and to give different perspectives on what folks are going through, to give different perspectives on the reality on the ground. It's one thing to watch the news, to read your own Facebook feed, to read somebody's Twitter feed, and to get really, really myopic about things. But it's another thing altogether to engage in conversation, either with people who have similar views or differing views. Right. And I don't even want to say hash things out, but just talk, right? Yeah. And it's kind of funny that this whole thing has actually, at least in my life, has actually brought more people together talking than not, which is good.
Yep.
I do find that I'm fascinated with, some thinking, not in a good way.
Idiots.
But yeah, there's that.
I gotta watch my cursing if we're live.
Yeah, no, you totally curse. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So,
I'm fine with it too.
It's an indicator of intelligence.
I must be fucking brilliant then.
You are. So anyway, that's the premise of all this. And Paul was nice enough to jump in with us. So Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, when this all gets done, I'll throw a bunch of links in the comments, you know, your story and stuff like that. But tell us who you are.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Rich Mac. Great to see you. Thank you for thinking of me. Appreciate it. So I started a company with my wife about 8 years ago, and it was a subscription box, which basically it was similar to, if anybody is familiar with Birchbox or Dollar Shave Club or these meal kits. And we were the 6th subscription box out there. It's called Bulu Box. We launched, we did better than we should have in the beginning. We grew to 500K monthly recurring revenue, raised 2 rounds of VC capital. Things were going really great. And then the competition of all the other subscription boxes came in, because any knucklehead can run a subscription box apparently. And so we really stopped and looked at what we were doing and thought, do we want to continue down this route of just basically a growing customer acquisition cost? And as we looked at it from different angles, we really realized that the large retail companies are trying to go more into digital or just diversify. And we had tons of emails from large brands asking us about, why subscription, this, that, the other thing. And so one day we basically said, well, what if we do a subscription box for some of these larger brands? So we did that. That was about 4 or 5 years ago. Now we work with GNC, Disney, Clorox, Hasbro. There's Scott's Miracle Grow. We're the largest shipper of plants over 2 foot tall. So these subscription boxes with these retail companies, they're tagging them on, and they're performing pretty dang well. And we're the typical company where everything was going great, and it was the last couple of years have been bigger and bigger, double or triple, and we thought we're gonna go into 2020 just rocking, and just bam, out of nowhere this happened, and really we're in a position where probably most people are, where it feels a little bit like hurry up and wait. Probably the thing that causes the most heartburn for me is that a lot of our partners are retail, and literally retail traffic just shut down, right? Yep. And so we're in the midst of figuring that out. And talk about property. I mean, I just got off the phone with one of our property managers for one of our warehouses, and talking about do we just pay rent, or do we hold? What is everybody doing what we're supposed to do? So probably in the same position as a lot of people are, of that hurry up and panic, I call it.
Yeah. How about Bulu Box or Bulu Group, Paul? Are you guys shut down, or you still have folks working? I mean, how at the shop?
Yeah. So March 12th, 11th or 12th, no, it's the 13th. So I remember the week of Friday, March 13th, the week leading up to that, we started hinting a little bit like, should we shut down? Should we go home? Whatever. And I remember a lot of people thought it was kind of crazy talk. Also, it didn't help that previous to this, I've been known as the germaphobe in the office, and everything's really clean, and I'm just kind of wired like that.
You're already like that, right?
Yeah. And so that Thursday we just made the call and said, look, we can all work remote. We're sitting by each other anyway, sending emails back and forth. And then, so that was an easy call to send, a couple dozen people from our corporate office home. And I don't think we really skipped a beat. But then we have the question of the warehouse, which 100,000 square feet, hundreds of people. I would say that the blessing is that we have a lot of seasonal work, and also the cadence of the subscription boxes that we send, it isn't like a daily shipment going out. We lump everything up, so we have these big shipments that go. So we were able to kind of hold off as long as we could doing any major shipments, and whether that was the brands or us, it was just picking up the phone and figuring it out. Some people had to cancel their shipments, and it looks like financially we'll be able to weather it. We haven't done any letting go of any people. We haven't done any salary adjustments. We're trying to take advantage of what's appropriate from the government, right? And I think at our warehouse we've had anywhere from 3 to 8 people there at a time, but it's 100,000 square feet, right? So there's some room there.
Right.
And then following all the, probably beyond, but following all the CDC regulations, just doing the best that we can, because, you know, it's interesting because like there's no playbook for, here's your options, shut the business down, maybe permanently, or put people's safety at risk. Which one is it? You know?
Yeah. Which one do you prefer?
Yeah. And I don't know. I think, you know, when it gets to the level of, you know, quite literally life and death, you know, I think my role is to listen, to collect the information, to hear out the employees. You know, it feels like there's always like two camps, right? There's one that's like, oh, this is stupid, it's not a big deal. And then there's like everybody's going to die, right? And there's like, what's the in between? And, you know, I think it's my job to collect all of the information and to say, hey, if we go down path A, this is the outcome. If we go down path B, this is the outcome. You know, and have group calls and say, what do we want to do? Don't be afraid to call or text me. And I think that, you know, similar to kind of how we were joking about, I mean, some people I've got closer to, you know, like some people, and the phone's on like it's always been, but even more now, 24/7, 365. And you just have to understand if, I would say definitely the first week or two of this, I saw this happening to a lot of people, the executive kind of drain, right? Where you start off the morning and you're like, okay, we're going to make it through this. And as the day wears on, you can just see people are mentally shot and almost get to be defeated. So you start talking to them at 10 or 11 and those just, you know, it's just really negative or pessimistic calls. And it's one of those things where you go, hey, let's just sleep on it and let's talk tomorrow. And that happened, I feel like, for about 2 weeks straight, right? And my only concern in all of it was probably that, you know, from a leadership standpoint, I'm sure you guys got a lot of the same articles. There's like, cut everything should be cut 33%, stock, you know, do this, do that, the other thing. You know, and then there's the other camp of like, you just gotta operate like it's a normal day or whatever. And probably my biggest fear in the whole thing was I didn't want to come off as, you know, snapping into like, we're cutting expenses, we're doing that, everybody shut up and listen to me. Because there's no playbook for this, right? Or the flip of just like not doing anything, right? And people are like, well, why isn't this person taking charge? And I think it took me, and I was very open with the group about that, right? And you know, I said kind of like, hey, let's just like, let me wrap my head around this and give me a little bit of time. And I think by not forcing it, like it's really clear of like what we should do and where we should go. But there was definitely a couple of days of just complete frustration by myself, probably a bunch of team members, but you know, you just don't want to, I think it's good to learn the playbooks, to learn the styles, to absorb, but you got to do what you are and what your business is. Right. And it's hard to do it in literally a damn pandemic. Right. Yeah. So, I would say right now, I'm very happy with our team. I think we're focusing on the right things at the right time. I'm definitely really concerned about the warehouse. Right. But I think we, especially being, you know, in Nebraska and being really cautious, and we're going to try to do, you know, we're doing all the disinfectant and everything, but, you know, are we going to take temperatures and, you know, we send people home pretty quickly. But it'll be interesting, you know, when we have to like start going full speed and watching what a lot of other people are doing. So I'd say if there's any bright side for us is that we've been able to push a lot of stuff out a month or two to be able to kind of gain our bearings. But yeah, I could go on and on about it, but it's been interesting. I'm excited to look back on this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How many so a couple of things you mentioned, that you're evaluating support as offered, you know, by the government, either through SBA, PPP, you know, CARES Act, et cetera, you know, and its appropriateness. And I shook my head on that because in a positive way, because I think that's critical, right? For the business owners out there, if you're in a position,
right.
And this is true if you're a homeowner, if you're in a position where I don't want to say you're flush with cash, but you're in a good cash position or reserves position to where you can continue to meet your obligations, and not, from a homeowner's perspective, not take the forbearance thing and totally screw yourself up. From a business owner's perspective, in one regard, use the facility if it's there for you, if it provides you with an appropriate lifeline. But if you're in a strong enough position where it doesn't, you don't need it.
Right.
They're limited funds, and so my concern is that there will be inappropriate use coming in for some business owners, not all, who said, "Hey, I got free money over here. I'll use that to run the business, and I'll sit on the cash over here." And as a result, there could be, ABC Flower Shop or XYZ Cake Shop or Goodrich Dairy or whoever who's like, "Man, all the freaking money's gone."
Right.
And we weren't sitting on the reserve. So I'm going with that. I got two questions. One, I didn't ask is, hey, how many employees do you guys have total, and how many warehouses are you working out of? That's part one. And then part two, that leads into, you got to, I don't want to know what the financials are, but that creates an operating nut that you've got to think about.
Oh, yeah.
So, what does that look like? And are you exploring those different facilities as a business owner, a significant business owner? I mean, not to say that somebody running a, $200,000 whatever isn't a significant business owner. They're all significant, but I mean, you got a little bit bigger nut to meet than
Thank you, Rich.
It's all same. It's all same rearranged.
I love that.
So we have the full-time equivalent of about 200 people. A lot of that is seasonal work, like I said. So we're able to kind of, manipulate that number, but not manipulate it, but maybe be flexible with that number, right? But yeah, I mean, at some point pretty soon, we're going to probably have to have like a couple hundred people in a space together, and all you can do is kind of prepare as good as you can, because I mean, like, quite honestly, like, if we don't do that, like, then there's no business to worry about, right?
Right.
And maybe that's okay. Like, I'm not that, foolish to go, well, we're going to put everybody in danger. And I just wouldn't be able to kind of like live with that,
No, right.
So I think at the end of the day, like, if because there is a price to pay for people's welfare, right? And like getting money into the community and being productive. And so, I think all you can do is kind of at the end of the day, like, take in all the information and make the decisions that you would want to hear if you were in the position of the people on the other end, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, they want to work, they got to work, right? They need to make some money. But it doesn't make it any easier. We have about 100,000 square foot warehouse. And then I think we work with like one or two other ones where they help us ship plants or whatever. And then we're just connected to a lot of different warehouses and distribution centers. But I'd say the one big one that we have in Lincoln, Nebraska is probably the most top of mind, because it's our responsibility as far as like cleaning and managing, and a lot of the other warehouses, like, we'll subcontract out, or, there's not really a lot we can impact on those. They got to, we want them to, we encourage them and we email them, we tell everybody to, do here's the playbook we expect you to do the same. But, I'm pretty comfortable and confident that we're doing the right things. But definitely when this all started going down, I mean, you just go, do we put boards all over the door? Like, how do we actually do this thing? So it doesn't make it any easier, but at the end of the day, if you can go to bed knowing you did the right thing, I will say, like, the thing that's probably been the most frustrating for me is, as I've had private conversations with people running businesses, people in charge, entrepreneurs, there's a lot of people that just automatically assume they're doomed. They're not doing the homework. They're not researching, which is just like crazy to me. Cause like, that's your job. Like, you need to read all the information. You need to, like, stop tuning into the news. Like, that doesn't really matter. That's already happened. Like, be proactive. And the amount of those folks that are like, oh, it's just not going to work for me, or we won't qualify. And I'm like, yes, you will, you know? And then I've seen this also happen, that I feel like some, and I won't name names, but you know, some companies might be maybe taking advantage of the situation a little bit, right? Like, oh, here's a good reason to cut everybody's pay, right? And I've talked to some employees, not ours, but others, and they're like, well, I'm just happy to have a job. And I'm like, well, yeah, but like, if your company wasn't impacted, like, it's kind of a bullshit move to everybody's salary gets reduced based on this. Well, we don't know what's going to happen, so we're just playing it safe. And I really love, and I remind myself of like Mark Cuban's quote of like, companies will be judged in the future on what they did today. And I'm really considering, you know, not just our business, but like as a person and a business owner, and in the future, because I doubt I'll do this till the day I die. Like, I just want to be able to look back and, you know, look every employee in the eye, look my kids in the eye, look my family. My brother's a pulmonologist in the front lines of the hospital, and just go, like, you know, we did the right thing. Or, you know, the Lincoln quote of, you know, I do the best I can, and if I don't, I'll have 10 angels swearing by me, whatever that quote is. And I think that's all a lot of people can do at this point. But yeah, I think, I hope, and I think that the future will not look well on people in the past that took advantage of this situation. And I do hope that if anybody's doing that or listening now, or thinking about doing that, put yourself ahead 10 years, you know, is that going to be okay? Or on your deathbed? Right. Or frankly, like, put yourself in the shoes of the people that you employ. Can you look them in the eye and be okay with that? And I think that is really important, because there is, in the chaos, there's so many ways to take advantage of it. And I just don't want to be any part of that. Right.
There are a lot of businesses that had to, and immediately, you know, laid off people quickly, you know, restaurant business. I've got one of my friends I talked to today, kind of as a nanny and personal assistant for a family, and then a bartender, and she's out of both jobs now because the family that she works for are at home, so they don't need help with their child, and the bar is obviously shut down right now too. So there are definitely people that are out of jobs. I'm really happy for you, Paul, and I kind of feel proud too. Our little small business, we're really trying to weather this without laying people off right now. You know, if this thing goes on for 3 or 4 months, that could change, obviously, for all of us. But we're trying to get through. You know, we haven't laid anybody off. We've made adjustments to have people work from home. I'm here in my office by myself. My partner in my team, my real estate team, JC, she's working from home as much as she can. And we just kind of try to adapt as much as we can, but also try to keep business as usual going as much as we can too, you know?
Yep. I think it's going to be fascinating to see what the future is after this. Right.
Yeah. For sure. You guys are both in businesses currently, you know, the current iteration of these things that are reliant on human contact. Yeah. Right. At some level. I mean, Matt, you and I in real estate, residential real estate, 100%. Right. Yep. But Paul, I mean, you got to have people, you know, moving stuff, doing stuff. And then, you know, and oh, by the way, another, you know, line of business or thing you're involved in is keynote speaking. And, you know, how often or frequent that is, I don't know, but I got to imagine that piece of your calendar is loosened up a little
bit. Speaking gigs on hold right now.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of the reasons I feel like what happened, one way to look at it is digital commerce and conventions and a lot of businesses just got fast forwarded 10 years without any notice, right? And so, you know, what does food delivery look like now? Because I can promise this, it's not just going to go back to how it was. Hopefully, for the most part, it does. But, you know, I just got off a conversation with some property owners, and, you know, we're kind of like, you know, our team's going like, do we need the office? Like, our lease is almost up. Like, do we actually need the office? Right. And I'm like, I am a proponent of keeping it or maybe doing like flex space. But then I thought, what's the future of that look like? And, I think co-working, like, would it be ironic if like WeWork comes out on top on all of this? Right?
Yeah.
But, I think that's going to be the case. And, it's in these situations, I do think entrepreneurs or people with the entrepreneurial mindset are at a unique advantage if they turn it on. And I think you have to make a conscious effort to turn that on. And so for us, really thinking about, okay, what would Bulu have looked like 10 years into the future had this not happened? And we're already on track to do this a little bit, but more of this kind of digital commerce solution. So not just subscription boxes. And, there's a lot of work coming in now, and you can kind of throw a stone and go, hey, look, all these schools need academic learning boxes or graduations, and we just picked up the phone. We're pretty aggressive. And I think the key that I keep telling my team is like, be like appropriately respectful, right? Because nobody likes it when somebody's just acting like nothing's happening and they're selling them, and I think the messaging is really important, but we are reaching out to grocery stores, schools, etc. And, kind of saying, look, yes, we've always done subscription boxes, but the mechanics of it are really just digital commerce, and we have fulfillment and customer service and project management and sourcing. And so I think that, we'll hiccup and sputter a little bit like people are, but if we play our cards right, I think we can actually, once a vaccine is developed, we can kind of hit the gas pedal and maybe fast forward our business a little bit.
We can all get our COVID shot, hopefully one of these days. Yeah, like a flu shot and get a COVID shot.
It's going to be something like scurvy, just like terrorize people, and then they eat an orange and it's gone. I keep joking, serious. I'm telling you, it's going to be something like eat a Pop-Tart and you're fine, or something. It's like the way that it's like impacting.
And wouldn't that be great?
It's. I like just have this weird feeling it's going to be, and it might not be a food, but it'll be like, oh, everybody using Dial soap or whatever it is. And like, it's just really weird how it's very specific, healthy people or whatever, or maybe a gene type, or I've seen all the hoaxy stuff, maybe not about blood type or whatever, but yeah, hopefully it's if you have really ornery 13-year-old dogs, nuts, they're the ones causing it, so you should get rid of it, because I have one of those.
you got an old junkyard dog right now, just
man,
still be sticking around. It's like,
yeah, you can hear him now. He does not like it that we're home. He's like, what are you guys doing in my house all the time?
That's in my nap time up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
So there's a yapper.
Yeah, I'll hit mute a little bit until he calms down.
You're good. So the two of you, I want to ask a question a little bit about kind of local leadership environment. The two of you are both engaged, I think, in a lot of different ways in leadership within Lincoln. So for those of you outside of the confines of the center of the country, Lincoln's about 300,000, 280,000, somewhere out there in terms of population, right? And so it's not a small town by any stretch of the imagination. It's a city with city problems and city issues, but it's also, surrounded by, obviously rural farmland, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's got suburbs, it's got a downtown, and all this kind of stuff. And it is an innovative, rather at times progressive thinking center within a larger, more conservative environment. And so in that way, it's a lot like the rest of the country, because you've got a state capital, you've got a university, so you've got a fair amount of progressive thought going on there. You've got if not, dependent upon who you ask, either Omaha leads in commerce or Lincoln does in commerce based upon the type.
Lincoln.
Lincoln.
I love Nebraska. Team Nebraska.
Right. But being within the both the business community, and I think both of you are engaged in the policy community, at least at the city level. What's the vibe there? Because, I see it from 1,200 miles away.
Yeah.
People going after the governor, people celebrating this person. I had a chance to interview Kyle Argenbright, who's the mayor of Valentine, last Wednesday.
Yeah.
And, Kyle got a real interesting perspective. They've got their first, had their first confirmed case actually a week ago on Friday.
Kyle's awesome, dude.
Yeah. But, as you guys are talking in that leadership crowd, what's the vibe? Are people butting heads? Or are people like, hey, you talked about a little bit earlier, Paul. It's like, the first 2 weeks, it's been like, man, it's like, playing, we're playing Burke again this weekend, and we're just getting to second quarter, like a 5'10" tackle. This sucks.
Only halftime right now. We got to play the rest of the game. Shit.
The cool thing about Lincoln, as you know, Rich, living here, is the people that live here are super proud of our city, and this city bands together. Thursday I was on a webinar with Leadership Lincoln sponsored. They have a program that they do every month called Hot Topics, and we talked about affordable housing this week, and we had over 100 people tuning in, just kind of on a virtual round table to talk about how we're going to help solve some of our affordable housing issues in Lincoln. From some of the activists and tenant representative groups to realtors to, I'm trying to think who all was in there, attorney, all kinds of people just volunteering their time to listen in and add some comments on some ideas on how we can help with our affordability of housing in Lincoln. So that's what I've seen, is a whole bunch of people banding together, and let's all work together. Let's look after each other and get through all this together. It's been really positive so far.
Yeah, I would second that, and I'd say it's actually something that I struggle with, and I've been waiting for somebody to kind of ask me that question, because we are involved. My wife's our co-founder; she's the brains of the operation, and she's involved with the Downtown Lincoln Association. Of all years, she said yes to the mayor to be on the, I think it's like the Health and Human Services Board.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, and there's just a lot of little, groups that we're a part of. And I think our mentality, because I have caught a few messages or texts, and I'm kind of giving people a pretty long leash, because you just don't know what's going on in people's lives. But some people are like, hey, like, speak up, and you got to do this, and people listen to your voice, and you have a lot of, basically, big social media. You're loud on Facebook, I think is what they're trying to say. So it's hard, because my gut reaction is to, like, strap on the PPC and go help out wherever I can, or if people contact me and say, hey, can you help deliver blah 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 blah, right? Like, I want to do all of those things. But I've had some pretty good mentors, and probably within the last couple of years, I've finally been able to, like, shut up and actually listen to people. And somebody said to me years ago, Paul, you got to save yourself before you can save the world. And that, I think, is no more apparent than right now. And I keep reminding myself, like, I got to, one, mentally, physically, nutrition, cleanliness, like, I got to take care of myself. Yep. Next, I got to take care of my family, because you're no good to your family if you're doing all that stuff, if you're not taking care of yourself. And then next, my responsibility is our business and our employees. Next after that is, like, our partners. And then, the last is the community. And I'll be honest, like, kind of, if you look at those rings, I got a hard enough time taking care of myself, right? My family's probably doing more for me than I am for them. But when my wife just looked in the door and went, oh.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah. you know, when you're like, I'm reading stuff till 4 a.m, you know, can you get up with that? We got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. It's tough, you know, and, you know, probably after we get to that employees, it's really hard to have any time or energy or anything to kind of go beyond and take care of the, you know, partners in the community, which I hope to someday. But I also realize, like, probably my job in all of this is to pay taxes, is to pay the bills, is to keep money in the community, right? And maybe that's just denial of what I'm telling myself, right? But what I don't want to do is go do all these things that might have a small impact in a small time frame, and then regret having done that because the business or whatever falls apart. So I think it's pretty sage advice from that person to, you know, save yourself before you save the world. And the time and energy, all of that stuff will work out, you know. And, you know, but we are doing things like if we happen to come across equipment or, like I said, my brother's a pulmonologist, and I stumbled upon somebody that had it was like a $200 mask, and I bought a couple of them for him and some of the people that he works with. So trying to like order food online or just flat out, you know, donating to, you know, your barber, like whoever it is, like, I think those are all like how I'm dealing with it. But I would say it's really challenging because I'm fighting the urge to be really loud or criticize or, you know, like just when I was going to the grocery store, like, you fucking idiots, go home, like, right? Like it's past, you know. Like literally I'm on my phone right now and it's saying like, today is the worst day to go to the grocery store.
Right.
And it's packed. And, you know, you have to remember, like, you don't know people's lives. You don't know, you know, what's going on or whatever. But it's hard to, you know, not do those things and be loud. It's important to know your role, maybe, right?
Right. All right. So I want to pivot, and I want to get a couple of laughs here. First, I mean, my gosh, we're 45 minutes in, and I'm so grateful to both of you for spending time. And maybe this isn't appropriate on Good Friday for those of you out there, but let's talk about fail disclosure a little bit.
Yeah.
So I've listened to the first couple of episodes of it. It's a podcast that you and remind me your partner's name again.
Clint Runge.
Okay.
And I got to give Paige Piper a shout out too. She's really the one that's getting it done. So I just call her our producer, our handler.
Yeah. And thank you, Paige, actually for getting this squared away.
Yeah, she's awesome.
It's just like
I would have
told Rich that Rich is the producer. You and I are just the talent, and he's got to get everything going for us. So. Oh
man, yeah, give that guy a beer.
All in due time. It's right over there.
Nice.
So tell us a little bit about Fail Disclosure. You know, where can people find it? How did it come to be?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Fail Disclosure is a podcast that my good friend and co-host Clint Runge run. He has a company called Arch Rival. It's a youth marketing agency. They work with Red Bull and a bunch of other folks. And really, I'd say it was birthed out of over the past probably 2 years, we've seen that a lot of our inbound leads come through me. So it actually doesn't go to the website. It doesn't go to like anything else. But the highest conversion rate, and if you're listening, like take advantage of this because we definitely don't share this information with a lot of people. But we found that by doing speaking engagements, by producing content, whether it was work related or not, and posting to social media, particularly LinkedIn. LinkedIn loves if you're on stage or if you have an award, or you know you're with a group of people. Those posts get a lot of likes. And what we found was a lot of people were direct messaging me saying like, "Hey, I saw this post. You do subscription boxes. We're kicking around the idea." So that's like where a lot of our inbound business comes from. Probably we average, I don't know, probably 3 to 5 leads per week. And now we're probably averaging about a dozen, but they're not the sort of client that we're looking for, but at this point we're kind of open to listening to everything, right? And so we really had our funnel down of, I get paid to present. We use that content, we push it out, and it's all, all awesome. I had been on a podcast previously called the Inside Outside podcast. I was on the first 40 episodes of it. It's still out there. Brian Ardinger runs it. It's great. And that grew to be #1 business trending on Apple for about 4 weeks, I think. And that was super fun. And there was a lot of just miscellaneous opportunities that would come from it, whether it was investors or potential employees or sponsorship dollars. And it was just a lot of fun, right? And so as this, basically our funnel of, look, we can't do events, we can only produce so much content. Like, how are we going to get people's attention? Mm-hmm. And so we had always kicked around the idea of a podcast, and it was always really lame. Like, let's talk about e-commerce, or let's talk about, like whatever it is. And it was just like, we couldn't find it interesting, like I was like, and, we would get down the line pretty far. And I was just like, I can't do it because I'm just not into it. And so I told my wife, I said, look, let's just look at this like a hobby, and what would I really actually want to do? Because just because the podcast is about something doesn't mean it has to be directly correlated, right? Right. And so I'm a podcast junkie. And one of my favorite podcasts is called Beautiful Anonymous with Chris Gethard. And the premise of the show is he's a comedian. People just call in and he says, what's on your mind? And they have a huge following. It's like a cult following. And it is phenomenal, the stuff that people talk about. I mean, it's just, you name it, it's out there. One of my favorite episodes is somebody is heading to jail for like 20 years, and it's like literally the last phone call before they go into jail. Wow. And so probably about 2 years ago, I was on a plane, and I thought, we had an HR problem at Bulu, and it was at the warehouse, and it was super funny. I'm trying to figure out how we can call in and share it. I mean, it wasn't funny if you're involved, but like from the outside looking in, it was pretty damn funny, right? And I thought, man, I would love to call into a show and talk about this because I just can't. And then I thought, well, that would be interesting if we did a similar anonymous podcast, but we had people call in with like work stories, because like everybody has those. And I started thinking back to all the places that I had worked, and I was like, there's been shit that's gone down everywhere. I don't care who you are. Like if you're 15 working at a Taco Inn, like some shit's gone down, right? Yeah. And so we had this idea, and then frankly, the pandemic kind of like pushed everything into fast forward. And my buddy Clint he's never on social media, and he saw a post that I had on LinkedIn where it said like, should I start a podcast or whatever? And he texted me out of nowhere and said, dude, let's do a podcast together. And I saw your post, and he said, let's talk. And he's like, all right. So he shows up, and I gave him the idea, and he's like, love it. And for those of you that know Clint, the dude's brilliant. I mean, he really is. Like he was like a nationally ranked magician when he was like 13. If you've ever seen him present, like he's just like a really brilliant dude. I really look up to him. And so here I am with like this guy that I've looked up to, and he's like a good friend. He's like, let's do it. And I pitched this idea, and he's like, I love it. And I was like, shit, like it must be something. And then we were connected with Grindstone Media and Landon Rhodes, who we just said, look, here's what we want to do. Whatever sponsorship dollars we'll have, we'll cover the cost. If there's anything after that, we'll split it up. And, we really slapped together that first episode. I mean, we really, and so.
Given the title of the first episode, that's an appropriate description.
I think it's called The One with the Big Black Dildo.
Yes. The one with the dildo.
Yeah. And so here we are, we don't know what we're doing, and we just kind of like blasting out on social media, call in anonymously, and nothing happens for like 30 minutes. So it's like embarrassing. And I'm like, this must have been a bad idea or whatever. Somebody calls in, don't know who the person is. They share a story, and all of a sudden we're sitting on these 4 hilarious stories, and we thought it was good. And then we posted, and between noon and I think midnight, we had 211 downloads and 15 reviews, which for a podcast you don't hit those. Yeah. Like you don't hit those numbers until like a month or two in. And so we had scheduled today, and it was just Clint and I who showed up to record it because we've been around each other anyway. And we recorded today, and same thing happened. You know, we turned it on, and I'm like, oh shit, man, nobody's going to call in. Well, we got 7 calls today.
Wow.
And my face hurts from laughing so hard. And I think what we're going to do now is just split it up into 10 to 20 minute, just one call per episode. And it all made a lot of sense having heard the first and second episodes. But yeah, we had somebody call in today. Somebody was jacking up a trailer to insert cinder blocks. And I don't know why I'm laughing. The thing fell and squashed somebody. And their like little legs were like kicking out of the end. And then the person they took off their hats and were like, you know, let's say a few words because they just watched this dude die. And so we're just like, our jaws are on the floor. And then apparently they hear this shovel. And they like kind of dig underneath. And this guy's spewing dust out of his mouth, yelling for a shovel. They dig him out. He's fine. And then they sit around and have a beer and laugh about it.
Oh my God. No.
Yeah. And there was another one where this guy threw a party. He's like a Vegas club owner. He threw a party on the rooftop, which he wasn't supposed to do, of the Vegas club, and accidentally locked themselves out on the 4th of July. So they were there from like 10 p.m. till 7 a.m. They had to like go to the bathroom up there. The sun hit them. And I'm like, this is exactly like the movie Hangover. And he goes, you know, this happened a while ago, and I almost think that maybe somebody heard that story and was like inspired, you know, a part of Hangover. So it's just really fun to hear the crazy stories. And honestly, it's a little bit like cathartic. So you go, okay, we're not the only like crazy business, because everybody has those stories. So yeah, I mean, check it out. It's a lot of fun, and we'll just keep doing it as long as the calls come in and we have enough to sponsor the production of it. And I think it's got some legs.
I was kind of bummed about the anonymous part, Paul, because I was listening literally to the woman with the dildo. And
I know.
She was so impressive, like how she had adapted her business. And I was literally thinking to myself, like, I would like to work for this lady. Like, she's amazing.
I thought the same thing.
And then the younger woman who called about the Nazi, just worked for the Nazi. She's like, I took this guy's followers from 600 to 6,000 before he realized that he's like a horrible person. And I was thinking, like, I'd like to talk to her because I'd love to help her to help me build my followers. You know, like, she sounds super talented. I was to get a hold of her. So
I was like laughing to myself about, like, there had to be that person for Hitler, right? Like, they're like, you know, doing all the letter press printing, and they're like, ooh, actually, this messaging is, the girl was great.
Hey,
she was like,
this wasn't in my job description. I don't, what? This is bullshit.
Just put it real quick.
It's going to be, I've loved the first 2 episodes. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think, you know,
I can fall in with a bunch of stories, but
do it.
Might recognize my voice now.
You would be blown away. One of the callers, you know, we've done 7, 8, 9, 10. We've done a dozen calls, and one of the callers was like, "I'm pretty tight with the person." I had no idea.
Oh, really?
It sounds different in your headphones, and honestly, when you have no idea what's happening, and people start talking about crazy stuff, and you're trying to, you know, do the interview and guide, like, you don't really have time to go, is that my uncle who, you know, and honestly, a lot of people have tried to share their names, or off the air they will, and we're just like, don't, and they're like, no, you can put it in there, and we're like, no, because like,
that's the whole purpose of the thing, right? Anonymous.
Yeah. So we have encouraged some people to email us anonymously, because their stories, they had more stories, and so we're like, you can be a regular guest, you know, we'll name you like the trailer park queen, and you can come and tell more stories, because she had a whole bunch of them. So yeah, it's a lot of fun though. It's my backup plan. So glad you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's got tons of potential. I can't wait to see episodes.
I will say, I've found myself, when I'm doing the kind of like working with partners and clients, like, I wanted to get a little bit more traction because I want to say like, oh, check out the podcast, right? But I'm like, some of them I got to make sure I'm okay with. And I have that moment, and then I'm like, who am I kidding? I don't really care. So I'm like, hey, check out the podcast or whatever. Because most people, like, they have a good sense of humor or whatever, right? But there was a few, you know, and based on the feedback, I'm like, I got to tone down the F-bombs a little bit, right? And some of the other stuff, but it's definitely a piece that's getting traction, and we're using the descriptions and the metadata to say subscription box, e-commerce, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yep.
I think that's the, you know, ultimately it's like a piece of content to share with people, to let people know who you are, and to honestly kind of like interrupt potential clients with something that isn't a sale. And I think that's more about developing the relationship than anything. And hopefully they call in.
The other thing you talked about in the podcast, which I really like about you and why I don't want you to quit the F-bombs, is you talk, and I think it was the woman with the dildo brought it up, about authenticity, you know?
Yeah.
You really have that, and I strive to have that in my business. And I talk to my clients that I'm selling houses to just like I'm talking to you guys right now, because I think any other way for me doesn't work. And Rich obviously is super authentic too. He and I have been friends for 40-ish, coming up on years, you know? So I love that about people. And that was a huge part of that first podcast. And I was just like, I really connected with me because I find you very authentic too. And that's the only way to be. It's the only way.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I think that's, you know, when people always describe like in sales or, you know, artists or whatever, they're like, what's that X factor or whatever? I really think that's what it is. I think it is the person that can say, this is who I am, you know, take it or leave it. And the hard part is you're going to have a lot of people that leave it. But the good part is the people that are attracted to it gravitate towards it. Right. And boy, the amount of times that people are like, you can't say that on social media. You can't say that on the podcast. I mean, it's almost every other day I get somebody that's like criticizing it. And I always just think to myself, if I'm not attacking or the intention isn't negative, it's okay. And but I do think, you know, even on sales calls, like every once in a while they'll bring me in if we have like a pretty big client we're kind of struggling to get done. We had one the other day and they were like, what is that? Like, what do you have or whatever? I'm like, honestly, it's just like I don't care. I care, but like I don't care. I'm just gonna say who we are, what we do. I'm gonna be myself. And I really do think that is the part that is the like thing that attracts, you know, it's the X factor, right? And I will say when people are like, well, how do you do that? Honestly, I think it's like, well, just like be really embarrassed by a few major things, you know, like if you've hit like rock bottom, you've like lost all your money, you've been embarrassed and humiliated and all of those things, which I have had all of those things. You just, and kind of like the lady that, you know, talked about the big black dildo, is just like, she's like, I ran out of fucks to give, you know, and, you know, and it's so true, you know, because it's like, I don't know, like, let me tell you how this all ends. We're all worm meat. That's how it ends, right? So like that's the end game. So like why not make sure you're not regretting anything on the way there? And we'll see how that works out for me, you know, in the long term. But it all feels right, and it feels good. And I think that authenticity is what allows the callers to really, you know, break, because what you don't hear on a lot of those calls is like it takes a little bit to get people to open up
on a roll.
Yeah. And then they hear you cursing and they hear like, oh, you're being honest. And then kind of the facade of like, oh, they're recording this and all of that kind of like tones down. And I think it's the same thing as sales. You know, that call that I had, it was like, hey, let me just, you know, we've been talking for 30 minutes here. Let me just cut to the chase. And I apologize if this is cavalier, but like, what are you guys trying to get out of this? And they said something. I'm like, okay, yeah. That's like that's the blanket statement, but like, what is it that like you want out of this? Like, why would you do this? And then they answered and I was like, thank you very much. That makes sense. And the group that was on the conference call were all kind of like, oh, we didn't know that was the real goal. And then you say after that, like, okay, now who's the decision maker? Who is going to probably tell me no in a week or two, which is fine because we just want a fast no or a fast yes. And I think people really appreciate that because we're all pretty much trying to do the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you can just cut to it, I think it makes people feel much more comfortable. And I view it as like my job to like just smash the wall and to widen the road so that people feel like they can kind of have a bigger space to drive in, right?
Yep.
You can tell I think about that a lot. I do. Yeah. Once you have kids, it kind of starts to, you question those things, but I can't stop doing it. So hopefully it doesn't negatively impact them too much.
I think you'll be all right. Seems like it's working out so far. And
we'll see.
I mean, Matt's been a parent a little longer than I have, but
a little bit
as they get older, they'll call you on stuff like everybody else does, and then they'll tell you what they believe and don't believe. I mean, just like we did, our parents, right? And it's either met with approval, denial, or a backhand. I mean, it's one of the three.
My kid sat on me the other day and he goes, "Daddy, your breath stinks, and why are there cracks on your face?" And I just started laughing. I started laughing so hard, and my wife was like, "Hilo," she's like, "Be nice," and I'm like, "He doesn't know," and I'm just laughing. Yeah. And he goes, "Daddy, your belly's jiggling," when I was laughing, and I just like lost it, and I was like, "It's fine," He's not doing it with a mean intention. It's like, well, let's try to explain to him why my breath stinks right now.
That's awesome. Paul, thank you so much, man. It's been great to talk to you, and thank you, Rich, for your time too, buddy, and setting
thank you guys,
man, with the plan.
Appreciate you guys. Yeah, this is awesome. This, I think it helps everybody out right now. So thank you very much for doing this and thinking of me. I sincerely appreciate it.
Everybody, stay safe out there. Wash your hands. Keep your distance.
There you go. Stay safe and sane.
Yep.
For sure. And yes, exactly.
It's happy hour.
And make sure you check out the podcast, Fail Disclosure. Yeah, and go to Bulu for all your needs that they're able to fulfill.
There you go.
And as we open the show, we also close the show with one final Go Big Red.
Go Big Red. And go Cyclones for Paul.
And Hulk.
There you go.
Throw you a little bone there, buddy.
Everybody have a great weekend.
Last thing, wrap up real quick. I forgot to ask this question earlier. Paul, how do you call in to Fail Disclosure?
So we are the new way that we're going to do it is we've used a blast out on social media called 888-628-FAIL. But I believe moving forward, what we're going to do is every first Friday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., you can call into 888-628-FAIL, or just follow the Facebook page and we're going to post out. And that would be the more calls, the better. And you can leave a message if you would like, and we'll get back to you.
That's awesome. It's going to be great.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
All right, boys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Have a wonderful weekend. Great to see
you too. Bye-bye.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.